you. Moving on. For our first item on the regular agenda is an art project proposal coming from the Outreach and Education Group, for which I'll turn the floor over to Sonali.
Okay, screen share is disabled. Were you able to hear me, Joshua?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Okay.
We saw your screen for a second there, I think.
Oh, you did?
Yeah,
okay.
It looked like it.
It said host disabled, participant screen sharing.
Sonali, I was able to share for some reason, so I can.
Great. Okay. Well, hi, folks. So the Education Committee and the Zero Waste Committee had an idea, and it was spurned from some comments that were made when we went and visited the Laguna from the Laguna Foundation on saying that when they've come up against different city agencies, one of the things that's said is what's in it for us. And just thinking about that in general, as far as climate change goes and our desires to, have the equity piece and give folks just a framework of interconnectivity and how every action has a reaction or an infinite chain reaction. And this was one of the ideas that came to be. And so it's a community upcycled art project. And Sunny's here to also help present and share what we came up with. Do you want to move the slide? So how can we facilitate a fun, engaging community project that meets the objectives of this committee? And I know for the Climate Action Committee, we have stated that we want to create replicable actions on climate change that can be shared with other communities. And then the second point is engaging, empowering disadvantaged communities while also supporting youth in teaching and leading. We wanted this to envision this to be something that would be very much youth-based and led, and are still working on that. And Sarah's here to gather those pieces together in the formative stages. And just want to say, as a committee, I don't even know how we go about approving a project. So this is, I guess this is that. And if it's fun, I feel like it's for everyone, like how to make this so that it's engaging. And Sunny, do you want to go down the Zero Waste Committee objectives?
Yeah, so we were also thinking about how do we get the word out about things. This new law that is starting to be enacted, SB 1383, which mandates reducing organic waste going to the landfill by 75% by 2025. So there's going to be local mandates for the city. So this could be an education project. And also, we also really want to support youth in teaching and leading. So we already have a group that's created a presentation on SB 1383 for Climate Action Night, which is tomorrow. I'll mention that at the end. Okay.
So the original idea was to invite every member of the community, every business, every resident, go to senior centers, have them contribute a piece that could be woven into like a city flag, and have each piece represent something on interconnectivity of the ecosystem. After meeting with Sunny, invited the Recology public education manager, who's a art graduate, and did these pieces here as her thesis. The one of the profile is her done, she painted it with plastic bags. So she used plastic bags to create this huge montage. And the other piece was done I think out of pieces that she had just touched for 5 minutes. So after we met with her, we thought about what would it look like to, as Sunny mentioned, use upcycled materials that would otherwise be destined for the landfill, whether they're textiles or not.
Do you want me to do this slide, Sonali?
Yes, please.
So we had the idea of having kind of some modular pieces, so different groups, like say a classroom, at a school or the senior center, or a group at the library or the Festival Centers for the Arts could actually do a 3D piece from upcycled materials that could then come together in a larger piece. And then these pieces, when they're ready, could be adopted by a business or displayed in a city building or the library, and could be sort of something that people could do like a walking tour of Sebastopol, and they might have QR codes that then would lead people to a website where there is information on personal actions people can take on climate, local things such as Sonoma Clean Power incentives, and things from Zero Waste Sonoma, waste reduction, electricity reduction, all that sort of thing. And so it becomes a scavenger hunt. And then we're just playing with some ideas. We don't have a fixed idea yet, but maybe these pieces come together at some point for like the Apple Blossom Parade or for a larger installation. They work together as a whole, as a scene or something that represents something. Yes, so that will be kind of next stages to figure that out. But the education piece is that they have QR codes that take people to a website where there's information, and maybe people can also on that website take pledges, personal pledges about what they're going to do. So yes. And so the following slides are just some things that I've done with students in the past. We did some years back this Redwood Revolution project where we went to schools and students created a one triangle with their message, and then we put them together as trees and took them to a big climate march in Oakland right before the Paris climate talks. So here's the trees marching through Oakland, and they've shown up in other marches. Here's last year, Zero Waste Days at the Sebastopol Farmers Market, and we had high school students leading a project of painting reusable cloth grocery bags, so people could come in. And then we also had some trifold boards in the background where we educated on some zero waste topics. So these are just, and there's some more high school students. Those are just examples of, a couple of community projects, maybe on a smaller scale that we've done. And I think this is our last slide here. Yes.
And that is delivering a message through art, I think has an ability to have a farther reach and potentially more immediate impact than a pamphlet. Something that engages folks and makes them a part of it, and also like changes our mindset. So
a lot of these photographs that are interspersed throughout and on the first page, these are just things we pulled from the internet, examples of art created from upcycled materials that would be heading to the landfill.
Sonali, can I ask what sort of support or approval you might be looking for from the committee at this time?
Absolutely. And before, but I just want to go back, that last slide said, it was a quote I read somewhere, if the climate can change, so can we. What sort of support? Well, one, I don't know how we as a committee decide on what to support. Whether, how we come together and decide whether this is like something is worthy of putting our time and attention to. There were these subsect groups that were created to work on different aspects. So I think at this moment, if we still have that little bit of time left, to ask people's thoughts, ideas, who they think, just thoughts and ideas on how this is landing for folks, or questions.
I see hands from Luke and Woody.
Yeah, thank you so much for this. Really exciting. And I love the inclusion of textiles as well. I think it could be worthwhile to reach out to the Legacy and Sebastopol Senior Centers, they have the textile upcycling down at this point. And also just want to highlight as well our exceptional Planning Commission Vice Chair, Kathy Ottinger, was the seamstress behind the face mask that went on the slow cat that you might have seen around town. So those are some people on the textile side that might be worth reaching out to.
Thank you.
Woody, did you have comment on this subject? You are muted.
Sorry. Thanks. Yeah, I did. Just, I also think it seems really cool. Thanks for sharing it with us. I think I'd expand a bit or continue on Joshua's question, because I get that you're talking about support, but I'm still not clear on what exactly this committee would do. And, this committee, I think a big chunk, if not all of what we're supposed to do is make recommendations to the city council. So I guess the question would be, can you unpack a little bit what you mean by the committee sort of supporting it, and what kind of recommendation might we make to the city council?
So if we were to endorse this, the city council would have to help us understand how we could display these pieces around town and support the integration of these QR codes and a website, right, that it would link to. So that's one aspect of it.
Yeah.
Having the city sanction something. Sorry, go ahead, Sunny.
Yeah, so having like the city council, like asking for their sort of stamp of approval or sort of, sponsorship of the project. I don't think there's much material money needed, but more just like this is kind of a city-wide project. And then, yeah, if there were some people on this committee that wanted to recommend information that could go on such a website, or have people that might want to work on such a website, that the QR codes would take people to, like, what's the sort of education to residents that the Climate Action Committee wants to get out there, say information on Sonoma Clean Power programs that people can join, or our committee has, the Zero Waste Committee also has some recommendations. So that would be kind of an invitation to this committee to give ideas for what could go on some said website.
Okay.
And managing managing the site will take, continuous ongoing support.
So if, to paraphrase, you have the people power to sort of gather materials and begin to enable the project physically, you don't think funding is much of an issue, but some technical support and promotion is the kind of support that you'd be looking for. Is that relatively accurate? Okay.
Yes, and
Diana,
being sponsored by the city,
okay.
right? Like the city giving its
Okay. In my role as facilitator, I want to note that we're running short of time. So if this gets intensive, we might table further discussion to the next meeting, but I do want to recognize Diana's comment or hand at this time.
Yeah, given the limited time, I think probably what's being looked for here that might allow further inquiry into this topic would be an endorsement of the project by the Climate Action Committee without, at the moment, any other commitment of time or resources. That's probably something that we could do right away. And then that would allow it to be placed on an agenda for the city council to discuss. I can't imagine there would be any objection. And I want to note also that we do have the Climate Action Committee doing a report out fairly soon to the city council, so that this could go on that list. So
Absolutely.
My suggestion, if you want to wrap it up, would be, if people are prepared, you might just do a quick straw vote on whether there's an interest in endorsing it at this point, or instead people want to wait and have further discussion before even doing that.
That sounds great. Could we at this time take a brief show of hands of people who support the project in principle, with the understanding that the specifics would be developed further and proposed at another time. So if you support it in principle, please raise your hand. See one, oh, okay, doing a quick count. Keep them up, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, I'm witnessing more than a quorum of hands in support of the project in general principles. So I would encourage maybe a slightly more bullet pointed proposal refinement. And so just to flesh it out a little further and then bring it to us again at a future meeting. Does that sound reasonable for everybody?
Absolutely.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any further comment from anyone at this time on this item?
I kind of had a good question. Is the outreach committee already working on some sort of website resources? Is that already something underway?
My understanding is that at this point, we have a little bit of space on the city website, but I don't believe that we have a point person working on web development. So, all right. If you please, we should move on to the next agenda item. Thank you for the discussion on this one. Our next one's kind of a big one, the working group reports. This could easily take a very long time. What we're shooting for at this time is 3 to 5 minutes of sort of a summary of the group activities. If there are substantial proposals or items to discuss, we may be tabling those to future meetings. That now we're essentially trying to take a survey and see what people have been up to and what they're looking forward towards. Diana.
I'm sorry to interject, but we do at least need to let public comment on the agenda item you just addressed.
I'm sorry, I didn't mention that specifically when I opened the floor to that. I was intending to include the members of the public who are present. Any members of the public want to jump in on the art project proposal? Okay, thank you. So on to working group reports, in no particular order other than the ones that they sort of appeared on initial lists. Would the funding committee care to say something about what they are up to or are interested in?
Sure, I can speak to that.
Thank you, Lisa.
Yes, so that would be Woody, me, and my husband, Steve Pierce, is also been joining us. And we're looking at ways to raise money for local climate action, obviously. We started with looking at some a property transfer tax possibility. There were too many roadblocks. More recently, we've been focused on a user utility tax. And instead of saying more about this now, we're hoping to be put on the agenda for the May 26th meeting here to do a presentation on this concept. So that's it.
That's great.
Woody, do you have anything to add?
No, I think you covered it pretty well.
Great, thank you. That was succinct and pointed, and we look forward to getting that on the agenda in the future. Next on the relatively random list that I have is the research committee as such, which I believe was Diana and Luke initially. And that was intended to, I believe, look at what other cities were doing and how it might pertain to our committee. Would one of you care to speak?
I personally don't have any updates, Diana.
I just say that we are, no, we do not have any specific reporting out, but we are continuing to do inquiries and we'll expect to start our meetings. We haven't had an opportunity to start meetings, but we'll do that, I would think, within the beginning of the next month. Right, Luke?
Okay, thank you for that. Next on the relatively random list, the Outreach and Education Committee, which I know is large and active. I look forward to hearing your thoughts.
Yeah, this is Alex here. I think you guys got a good taste of one project that we're working on currently on the education outreach portion for the art awareness. I think and Sunali and Sunny also mentioned the presentations a little bit through the high school and getting our youth and education involved and helping them promote the message of sustainability, and I think also just figuring out other ways to engage them. Also just shouting it out. I know that we'll be needing another youth candidate, so if you know anybody, let us know. And I know Sarah's working on that as well, but she's growing up and going to college, so she'll be leaving us shortly, I know. And then we're also looking at some ways we're actually looking at ways to partner with Daily Acts in some way, shape, or form, but I know that they don't do as much in Sebastopol as they used to. One specific thing was working on some sort of community garden education project that Dina was really excited about. And then to add on to Sonali's project in a little bit of a different vein, instead of the art awareness, but also putting QR codes and pointing out different climate tools around the city that we have, like the solar panel installations, doing maybe the water catchment area. So that's something that I will work to build a proposal for and maybe present at some point in the next month or so to you guys as part of a kind of a self-guided tour for climate. And that's basically the update that we have, unless anybody else on our team wants to add in.
Great. Thank you very much for your ideas, and we look forward to hearing more. Next one, energy microgrids. Who would care to speak to that subject?
I can do that one too. So that is Jerry and Kenna and I. And it started off being called Energy and Microgrids, but where the microgrid portion is kind of on hold for now. It's a very complicated one with a lot of roadblocks and maybe not ready for us to move on at this time. But so a couple of things that we're looking at. One is the question of smart meters. We currently have a moratorium on new smart meters in town, and they're required for some rebate incentives for various things like the heat pump water heaters. And they're also useful for time of use metering and minimizing power shutoffs and that sort of thing. So it's a very difficult issue because there's a lot of feelings about it. But one question we have is how to proceed with, we have some questions for PG&E, and they probably have to come from the city of Sebastopol. So we're wondering, and maybe I can reach out to you directly, Diana, how to navigate that to get some more information. So anyway, we're hoping to have that on the agenda for this meeting soon, so we can start to talk about it and see how we might want to proceed. The other thing we're looking at is various all-electric reach ordinances. Sebastopol has some major developments in the works, and we're hoping that at least some of these projects can use as little natural gas as possible. So that's another thing that we'd like to do a presentation on at some point soon. And that's it. Kenna or Jerry, do you have any things to add there?
The only qualification I'd make would be this, was that we did talk about the meters, and we do have a idea of how to proceed on it, but we wanted to put all the details together. And Kenneth said there wasn't time in this meeting, so we would bring it to the next meeting.
Yes.
Great, thank you for that. I believe in the agenda formatting, we already have the smart meters piece on the next meeting for the agenda for the following meeting. Was there a second one there that you might also want to talk to about that meeting? Just while we're, okay. All right, thank you. The next on the list I have is transportation. Who might care to speak to transportation?
So I'd be willing to speak to that one, and Alex, this is Alex and myself and Luke, and guys, feel free to chime in if you want, especially if I miss anything. We have met a couple times, but never all together as one, so it's been sort of a mix and match. and discussed a number of things. But to keep it brief, there's 2 items that we think we can bring forward to an agenda when there's room to squeeze it in. One is another piece of legislation, AB 965 from our local Mark Levine. And this is a bill all around getting electric vehicle charging infrastructure standards in place in the housing code for new construction for multi-family dwellings. So it's another case where we would want to support that, and I have shared that information with Kenna, and I think that the other people that need to see that. And then the other one was the issue of the city of Sebastopol considering a prohibition on the construction of new gas stations. So those 2 items we'd like to, this kind of also goes in that category of future agenda items. So those were the 2 main things, but we did talk about a bunch of other stuff. So Alex and Luke, if you want to add anything, feel free.
I'll just add an update from the Planning Commission meeting last night. The Planning Commission just approved a handful of transportation-oriented projects that have been in the pipeline for the city: 8 ADA curb ramps along 116 and 2 crosswalk improvements on Bodega, one at Robinson and another one really near Robinson. I can't remember what the other one is, but it's also on Bodega. And there was expression from the city engineer as well that and reminder that the Bodega Avenue pedestrian improvements will be continuing over the next year or so. So that's definitely an opportunity for our subcommittee and for the committee at large to be involved in.
Thank you. Alex, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I just wanted to say, I think there's some longer term projects that we can look at with the complete streets and making potentially, at least gathering some information, putting it together to make a proposal for the next general plan as that's starting, as that meeting starts to happen in the next few years. I think that would be a really good opportunity for long term, because I think it's going to take a lot of infrastructure change for some of the transportation pieces that we really want to make.
Nice, duly noted. Thank you all for your input and ideas. So the AB 965 item is definitely on the agenda for the next meeting. All right, let's see. Sequestration is also on the list here. I will speak to some of that as my role as one of the committee members there. We are loosely taking a site-based approach to the question of sequestration, how can be promoted in the area, and have been spending time trying to inventory and understand sites that the city owns or has a management role in for issues and opportunities they might present related to the larger missions of our greater group. We did do a tour of the Laguna with a restoration manager there and learned, interestingly enough, that they have basically maxed out their tree plantings in the Laguna Reserve there, and that further carbon sequestration efforts on that site would be more along the lines of encouraging the native perennial grass land management, which would probably relate to managed grazing and some other issues there. So that's a line of inquiry I'm exploring with the restoration manager there. So that's one piece. Another thing that came up was the idea of doing some green planning and potentially a green audit for the high school campus, particularly as it relates to its adjacency to the Laguna. Made some inquiries within the administration there. Apparently that has not been undertaken so far, but they were actually looking to start doing that next fall. So I've been in contact with the school district facilities manager, and they were interested in fall 21 beginning to do something like a green plan for the high school campus. In that sense, I think that would be a great opportunity for various parts of our committee to be engaged. The challenge would be to not make it more work for the teachers and staff and students at the site while still engaging their input. So that's just sort of an open, longer term possibility. And then on the third site that we looked at is the Park Village site, which is a city-owned property of low-income housing and some subsidized housing support services, immediately adjacent to the Laguna, which suffered poorly in the flood a couple of years ago and has not completely recovered. Definitely represents an underserved community. there are some opportunities there in the community gardening vein and potentially some tree planting veins, things like that, which Dina is interested in talking about or exploring. So I'd like to turn the floor over to Dina for some moments to discuss that option. I can't hear you. Can others?
No, you're not muted. We just can't hear you.
Okay, is that better?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, sorry about that. So our group went and met with the West County Services case manager that works on site. It's a really interesting conglomeration. The city owns the property and West County Services owns 8 of the trailer homes there, and people that were formerly homeless get to live there and supposedly transition out when they're ready. And the case service manager was really interested in having some sort of collaboration with our group if possible. She was also thinking of having a resident committee. So we were kind of exploring and wanted your okay to further explore a collaboration with them. It also could include working in their gardens or providing a work day just to make a presence and share information as education, helping them rebuild their compost system that was out of whack and out of use for many years, especially with SB 1383 coming along. That would tie in nicely. Just food security issues and an overlap with working with all kinds of income level people. And we just were exploring if we have the committee's interest enough to keep researching having some sort of collaboration with them.
In the interest of time at this point, I'd like to put this in the same sort of category as the art project. It was just to say we'll take a brief show of hands of folks who support developing a project proposal on with respect to that site further to be presented again in a future form. But in general principle, if we could see a show of hands of committee members who think that this could be a good avenue to pursue.
Can I make a comment before we go there?
Certainly.
So, I know we're on limited time, but this strikes me as it being important given the amount of work that the people in this room have already taken on for us to understand and for Dina to have some indication from us about whether there's any sweat interest availability of kind of sweat equity. Are people in this room willing to actually put some time and effort, able to put some time and effort into this project? Because I have a sense that maybe that's what would be required for Dina. And so I guess that would be the question. Dina, are you looking just for endorsement, which is one thing, or do you think that there's going to be more that might be expected from this group?
Endorsement at this time, if we did have an actual physical presence in a workday, then some of us would need to show up and represent the committee. I know at least a few of us are willing to put in a half day or a whole day doing that if it's planned out. It's kind of like this is a community garden in Sebastopol. There's another community garden by the skate park, but this one is so unique with all the aspects of it and the multi-solutions that interacting could bring, that it's just, I feel, worth pursuing if you all feel so as well.
Kenna, do you have a comment?
Yes, I was just going to propose that maybe the sequestration committee actually just write up an endorsement so that we kind of have a little bit more clear understanding of what it is we're endorsing, and then send that out with the packet for the next one, and we could vote on the endorsement at that time.
That sounds fine to me offhand, both as facilitator, member of the committee. Jerry, any further comment on this?
Yeah, my comment is during the report out, I think during the report out, it's not the right time for us to endorse or not endorse or even discuss. It's a report out of what's been happening. And then a presentation would be done in a meeting showing the points and what's expected, what the future is, et cetera. And we can have a discussion on it. And we don't have the time to do that in this part.
Certainly. In that case, I believe what we have come to is something more like a formal proposal and future endorsement from to be put back to the sequestration committee. Moving on, thank you. Social Equity Committee. Woody?
Go, Woody.
Okay, good. So we've been having communications, and that's again, it's Diana, myself, and Kenna. I think the most important thing I want to say is that last week the City Council, on their consent calendar, the consent agenda, approved the reopening of the application process. So, sort of a question to, we don't have city staff, but maybe Diana, you can speak to how, whatever the sort of official application materials that we would need to be able to share it with folks for some of the targeted outreach that at least I plan to do to get it into the right hands. We would need that. And so whether or not people want to use the letter is one thing, but we would need to have where, if it's a place on the website, just to link to that, or whatever we need to share officially with folks. So we have been communicating and working on responding to what we heard last time when we talked about, when we shared the initial drafts of a sort of principles and checklist. So still in the works, and still yet to be updated version shared at a future meeting.
A note on that from the facilitation standpoint, I believe that was on the agenda for the next meeting, which is to say, would it be reasonable to get from you guys a preliminary handout for inclusion in the agenda for that by a week from today? Is that realistic for your group?
I think if I can see nods from, I think I do see nods from Kenna. Yeah, I think that's realistic.
Great, okay. Anything else on that front? Thank you, Woody. Okay, and last but certainly not least, the CAP and metrics working group. We had one meeting of sorts quite a while ago. The group process faltered to a certain extent. Jerry is kind of the senior member, has come to some conclusions about our resources in tackling this issue, the greater project at the CAP. And so I'll turn it over to Jerry.
Okay. So I'm sharing my screen. I hope it shows up. Is it showing?
Yes.
Okay. Having gone through the CAP process once before, I understand the reasons for a CAP. I'm sorry that Carrie's not here, so she's not there to correct me. But basically, it's specified as part of CEQA. It's part of an element, and you don't have to do the evaluations if you have a CAP already when you have projects, whatever, inside of a city. But the main part of the CAP is it's a comprehensive plan that establishes actionable items and measurable policies. It takes a while to do this, and it takes a lot of resource to do this. We had one meeting and laid out, I suggested the sequence that we would follow. It's actually based on the sequence that was followed that I experienced before as to how a city would get a CAP done in place. But it's going to take a lot of hours and a lot of people time and staff. And basically, what I came up with was that first you have to develop a baseline, and then you have to find a set of useful and appropriate actions and policies for our city. And then after that, you establish the methods for maintaining and measuring those metrics. By the way, none of the metrics that I could find for anything that was mentioned in the RCPA has been remeasured, if it was measured in the first place. And then finally, you have to make course adjustments. And I tend to believe this, and this is not the committee, it's mine. I talked to Kenna about this. Due to its size, Sebastopol simply does not have the capacity to staff working on a CAP. It's outside of the expertise also of who we have available to us. And so I think we need to find, and I would kick it back to the city council, a non-traditional method of getting the cap completed. Now, I did send an email out several weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, with a suggestion as to how this might be done. That would have to leverage resources outside of Sebastopol and certainly outside of this committee in order to get it done in place. And I don't know if that's going to happen or not. So that was where I was with this. So I'd like to dissolve, even though it's on the work list. I had a different deck that I had created once before, which outlines what the city council said we should be working on. And the cap was one of the 5 items. But in our first meeting, we decided everybody should work on what they wanted to work on. And that means there's just not enough resource to do a cap. There's not enough money to do a cap. There's not enough manpower to do a cap.
So we are coming up towards the end of our working group time slot there. So just to say, in the interest of moving things along, this is something that brooks further discussion, obviously, and a way to reconnoiter and find other strategies for moving forward. Kenna and I intend to pursue this offline with City Council in some fashion, try to develop, another way to approach the big subject of the cap. And there will be more chances to discuss this and review it in the future. Definitely.
Yeah, just so that you understand, I mean, it's because if I didn't have the experience already of having done this, I wouldn't have recognized, by the way, the staff in Sunnyvale has an amazing staff. They didn't know how complicated it was. They had budgeted $100,000 to develop the cap. They blew right through the budget. So it's not something simple to do. And we have to find a way to do this at county level, I think. And that's what I basically sent back.
Fair enough. All right. Thanks, everyone, for your input. It's great to hear in a comprehensive way what people have been up to. I'm sorry, Diana, you had a hand for a second there. Did you want to add something?
Yeah,
Okay.
Just wanted to invite you and Kenna to reach out to me and we can collaborate on steps forward.
We'll sort something, yes. Okay, so again, thanks to everybody for all of that. Look forward to hearing more from all the working groups in the future. We're moving towards this facilitation format of where we don't necessarily want to bring up a new subject, discuss it, and try to vote on it all in the same meeting, because that becomes really a kind of a time sink. So you'll see that in general, we're looking for floating a proposal, getting background materials on it, coming back to it. You'll see that sort of process happening with a lot of these things in the future. Okay, moving on to the next piece on the agenda, support for SB 99. I'm sorry, Diana. Yes.
Agenda call for public comment.
Any public comment on the working group reports? Okay. The item of support for SB 99 was brought up last time, was put forth in the handouts, was sent back to the Energy Working Group for a recommendation, which they have provided. I will now turn it over to Woody and anybody else in the Energy Group who wishes to speak to the subject.
Well, thanks. I'm not sure what more you need from me. I see Jerry has a little. He's using the new symbol, and I understand it. So, Jerry, just go ahead.
Yeah, I was wondering why you handed it over to Woody, because you sent it to the Energy Committee. The Energy Committee did work on it and put material together to bring back to the committee. And so I think Lisa needs to do this.
Fair.
Are you prepared? Should I pop up the stuff that I had sent back to you and you guys said yes? And let me see if I can find it. Let's go on to the next agenda item. I wasn't prepared to do that. I thought you were going to take care of it.
Fair enough. Well,
I actually have it handy if you want me to put it on.
But did we send it to you, Woody?
Well, wasn't it sent to the whole?
It was with the agenda. Everybody
yeah, it was in the agenda. It was in the agenda pack.
Oh, that's right. Okay, I'm sorry.
If you all are looking
So-
for a simple endorsement at this time, we might be able to do that if enough people read the material and feel ready to do a show of hands. I'm not sure what the action item is at this time, and I would welcome you guys to ask for what you would like.
Well, the action item is to recommend to the city council to support, to support it, support SB 99, and that would mean like supporting it with a letter. So, and a letter has been drafted and shared. I sent that to Alan and others on this is on the April 15th, but I didn't see that in the pack. But so that's handy. We have that. Can folks see my screen that has the I believe, Jerry, correct me if I'm wrong, what's on the screen or should be on your screen now is the recommendation from the energy subgroup to our group to would go to the, anyway, Sebastopol Climate Committee recommends to the city council send the letter. And so this is what was in our pack.
Yeah, let me just clarify. What's in the pack is this. We discussed this and then we opened the material which Woody supplied us and went to the original legislation as well and read through the legislation to see what the various points were. And then what's been submitted back to the committee is a highlight of all of those points that we found in the legislation. The key points that we found was it's a reorientation of what is already there. And the reorientation is an orientation that talks about resiliency, but takes it also to another step that talks about resiliency and doing this in a clean way as far as energy in communities. The key point that we picked up was there's money involved in this as well. And that wasn't there before. There was the thou shalts. This one actually tells the CEC, okay, and you're going to have grants and you're going to issue grants in certain cases. It's not clear that Sebastopol would be qualified based on some of the adjectives as far as supporting underprivileged and neighborhoods. So we might not be a candidate for funding, but we can always try.
Yeah, I can speak to that, which is that it prioritizes the historically disadvantaged communities, and it does leave it somewhat vague. So my take on it is that there would be a period of time where there's sort of a priority period for the disadvantaged communities under, and but eventually cities like Sebastopol would be able to apply.
All right. Kenna, did you have a comment?
Well, I'd just like to make a motion that we adopt this document that Woody just shared and that everyone received in their packet and send this on to City Council requesting an endorsement of, that the City Council send a letter endorsing this bill.
I'd like to second that.
Great. All right, let's do a long show of hands, please, and see if we can raise a quorum in support of this. All who support adopting this recommendation and pushing it forward, please raise your hand and hold it up. 1, 2, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It looks unanimous so far as I can tell. So nice work, Energy Committee. Thank you. Yes, Jerry.
And just a process. I notice we keep leaving this out. And we did do the vote. What I think we should be doing is this. After somebody gives a presentation, we should ask, is there discussion? And that would be within the committee, is there discussion? And then we would turn to public for public comments on it so we can use that. And if there's further discussion that we have further discussion based on the public comment, and then we vote. We seem to get the vote in first and then have discussion later on. That doesn't make, it doesn't seem to work right.
Okay, to try to be fair to your suggestion at the moment, is there any further comment or discussion from anyone, including the public, on this motion? I do see, Diana, that you have a hand up, so if you'd like to start.
Yeah, just the general format is in fact present the topic, questions from the committee, then go to public, any public comment, then come back for discussion within the committee and a final vote. I'm not sure that's what Jerry said, but that's the general, it's probably aligns with what he said. On this letter itself, I guess for future, it would be helpful to me as a committee member to have, to the extent that our committee has the bandwidth for doing it, to have kind of a little more outline on what the substance of the bill is. So we see that we have the full bill document, and then we have kind of a, we'd like to have this done for future in order to inform ourselves. I think it would be nice to have kind of the executive summary of, what the points are. So
I felt like saw that in the letter, Jerry.
Yeah. Okay,
Jerry,
key detailed points. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to did we miss something? Because that's what we tried to do. Precisely.
Yeah, and I guess, and I should modify my comment. Thank you. Yes, I think the one-page letter is in fact a good executive summary of the bill. I'm probably just responding to the more, what the heck does it have to do? How does it affect Sebastopol? Is there an upside downside that we should be perceiving? And I have to say that that's partly driven, that comment is partly driven by our work on the equity subcommittee in trying to assess the impact for our population. But yes, I withdraw my comment. I think the letter did an excellent job, actually, as I'm looking at it on my screen here, of summarizing the bill. So
yeah, and Diane, just to clarify, the one major point that comes out of it that I think does impact us, if I was to pick anything out of the whole thing, the reorientation and the legislation says this: if you're working on resiliency, you need to do it in a green way. Okay, and that wasn't there before.
Thank you. And just on the equity side, I mean, I know it is prioritizing populations that we see as traditionally needing our equity lens, but the green side also may have an impact on others. But, we're doing our equity checklist, and hey, the equity group should use this as kind of a pilot for our little equity checklist. That would be fun. Okay, thank you.
All right. Any further discussion or comments from the public on this part of the agenda? Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda was the gas station upgrade proposal, from which we are expecting a staff report from Carrie. It being that she is not present today, I believe we shall be moving that forward. Just a summary understanding for people in general. The Chevron station on the east side of the Laguna Bridge is potentially getting ready for an upgrade, which should include things along the lines of protecting the infrastructure from flooding. And it's my understanding that there may be some electric charging stations that go in there, that it's not really an expansion, but sort of a remodel of the station, although the store may grow larger. So the intent of the process on this one is that we will get a report from the city as to the nature of the proposal. We will consider whether that is something that our committee needs to weigh in on or not, and whether to handle it in committee or working group. And this is something that will unfold in the meetings to come. I saw hands from Jerry and Diana.
Go, Jerry.
What I think would work well is in something like this one, that if it was coming to the city council, that the city council would direct us to evaluate it. In some cases, we can pick things up, but it would be nice that the city council relied on the climate committee and said, that's your area of expertise. We're supposed to become our area of expertise. Would you please look at this with that lens, as opposed to the lens that planning might look at? So it would be nice if it came from them to us. I don't know how you feel about that, Diane.
You're muted, Diana.
The one thing that I wanted to note is I just came across late an email that was sent by Carrie, which I put in the chat box, but I just want everyone to know that she did send that earlier, much earlier today. And I didn't catch it. So she is having a bad reaction to a vaccination shot, and she has an update on the gas station piece that Joshua, you may have already picked up. On the topic of of who initiates the discussion, I think we have multiple players here. There are going to be, as we move forward, issues that the Climate Action Committee feels are important, and the Climate Action Committee initiates the discussion on those topics. The staff, you have a very good point, I think, and I will talk to Carrie about that. This is a new relationship, and to the extent that the staff, city staff has a topic that they're looking into, collaborating with this committee and engaging this committee's experts and expertise, I think would be an incredible asset and benefit the final outcome. So I will have a conversation with Carrie about that. And I think that's an awareness piece that we can all benefit from, because I think that a relationship, especially between planning, Luke will say, yeah, and this committee is going to be essential as I see all of these policy statements. So thank you for bringing that up, Jerry. And actually, I'm going to connect with Luke about that too. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, everyone. So again, this is something we will hear more about in future meetings. Is there any further discussion or commentary, including from the public at this time on the subject? Okay, thank you. Moving on, our next one is the fact that the Climate Action Committee is supposed to make some form of report at the City Council meeting on May 18th, which follows shortly after our next committee meeting itself. Our intent for today is to do a brief round robin, which is to say I'd like to hear from pretty much everybody for a minute to 1 to 2 minutes max, if you have ideas about what we should be presenting at that time and who might be presenting it. We're not intending to formulate all of that at this meeting so much as broach the subject and have a brainstorm. I do have one clarifying question that I'd like to put to Diana, if I may, about just the time allotment on that agenda for the presentation from the committee.
I think we should plan on about 15 minutes, a very brief amount of time. The Zero Waste Committee, and I'll confirm that, but there are 17 items on that agenda, and some of them fairly substantial. I was just talking to Mary about that, Mary Gurley. So I think we should big punch, 15 minutes, get the key topics out, but I will confirm the actual time, but that would be my suggestion. If we plan 15 minutes, it'll be 25. That's just how it goes.
Great, thank you for that. All right, so yeah, I would welcome comment from anybody and everybody. Please try to keep it brief. This is essentially a brainstorm rather than a formulation. The first hand I see is Woody. And Lisa next.
Thanks, Joshua. Yeah, I think since this is the first time the committee is reporting to the city council, I really think it should, I think that we shouldn't try to drill down into specific, a lot. I mean, if there are some that people feel strongly that they want to, get to some specifics, good, especially ones where we've gotten to a certain point, where there's a there. But I think this is sort of an introductory thing, talking about the fact that we launched and the fact that we're getting along pretty well and we're divided into groups and, excuse me, and so making progress on a lot of things, but really just sort of as introductory thing and sort of high level for this first one, I think would probably be appropriate. That's all I wanted to say. Thanks.
Well said, thank you. I had Lisa in line and I see Jerry next.
Yeah, I'll second what Woody just said. It also, I was wondering, having these regularly scheduled kind of almost check-in meetings with the council, I don't know how that relates to if we want to bring things up with the council, like if we want to do presentations, are we hopefully gonna still have opportunities to do that? So I just wonder, I know council has a lot on their plates and we don't want to just take their time because we can, unless we really have something that we need to share with them. So that's my feeling on that.
Well said again. Thank you, Jerry.
So, no surprise, I would go a little bit differently. back in December of 2019, the city council decided that the city should have a climate committee. And when they decided that, they listed 6 things the climate committee should do. I think we should report back on the 6 things. I think that's what the report out ought to be to start with. If there's other initiatives that we have and we've begun or we think are important to be looked at that the city council missed in the 6 items, then I think we should highlight those as well. And I think that should be the report out. And that should take less than 15 minutes, I think, because you could take each one of the bullets and say, this is what we thought about that so far, and this is what we've done.
All right, thank you. Who else would care to comment at this time? I could start picking names, but if you step up first, it might be easier.
Just call on us, Joshua.
Okay, Kenna, what would you like to say about that?
I think we can do a combination of Jerry's idea with the overview of, these are the things we were tasked with. This is what we've done so far. And, the things that we feel like we're making some progress on and the things that we feel like we're not making progress on. I think that those 2 ideas are not either or. I think we can combine them and that will make a good presentation. I was told by city staff 10 to 15 minutes. So over, high level is a good approach for that time designation.
Great. Luke, in the random screen shot, what do you think?
I see Sonali raising a hand. No, okay.
We'll get to her too. Don't worry about it.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have too many thoughts on how to go about it. I agree with Kenna that combining the sort of objectives that were originally laid out by the council, combining that with just sort of a general overview of what we've been doing, I think that's capable of being accomplished in 10 to 15 minutes.
Great, thank you. Sonali, since your name came up.
I was just gonna go before you picked on me, that's all. I'm with the hybrid proposal.
Okay, great. Sarah, anything to add from your standpoint?
I pretty much agree. I think introducing us as a committee, our groups, and I think because we're an action group, it'd be good to go over at least briefly what we've been working on, especially Sonali's idea. And also I was wondering, would we, who would be speaking? Would it just be 1 or 2 of us, or would we all try to say something?
That is a very good question. Chances are everybody speaking would be a bit unwieldy. We probably talk about having a limited number of representatives, though certainly everybody is welcome to attend. But probably in the interest of time, we appoint a couple of people to present, and we will take this up further at the next meeting. As again, today we're broaching the subject, and hopefully we'll have something more formulated to chew on next time. Let's see, who haven't I heard from? Dina, would you care to add anything? I'm sorry, my screens are skipping around.
I like the hybrid idea, and I just wanted to say maybe give them a heads up about the equity matrix, because after it's piloted, we want their decisions to be run through there too.
Good point. Diana, were you looking?
Yeah. With such limited time, I vote for, we have 3 co-leads. So Kenna, Joshua, Alex, I think some combination of those 3 should be the presenters, would be my proposal. They've got the overview for us and all of us can attend. And remember, public comment is open to everyone. Like the idea, remember, and keep an eye on, what is the primary goal here? The first time the city council has seen something from this group, sure, reporting out on the items that were on the task list is great. Communicating any, short list of kind of interesting projects that are going on or being inquired into, which I think could be done simply by identifying the working groups. I mean, that speaks for itself. and the people who are on those working groups, and that could be done by one person. Keep in mind also that you can always submit a piece of paper. You know, there could be a summary, a written piece that would be a little summary if you want to do that with the working groups. But this is your first introduction, first impression. And so that kind of hybrid model sounds great. And hitting the, you know, we know what our task is great. And then keep in mind that, yes, to the extent that you want particular issues like a letter written on the issue that we looked at today, yeah, that needs to be calendared and agendized as a separate item.
Fair enough. I believe Alex is the, oh, I'm sorry, Woody, you've got the pinch going on. Yeah, shove it up in your camera. You're like hiding in the woods.
Oh, am I hiding in the woods? Okay, sorry. Anyway, you did catch me. Good. No, I just wanted to, you know, I totally accept, Jerry. I'll consider it a friendly amendment. And actually, I never meant to exclude doing something smart like that, you know, tapping into, you know, here's what we were charged with. And so, yeah, that all makes perfect sense. I just wanted to affirm that I agree with that. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Alex, any comments to add on the subject?
Yeah, essentially what Woody said, I think we should address what the task we were initially charged with. And then I think we can notify the group of how we may have pivoted a little bit or what we're focusing on right now, and that maybe the intention long term. But I think general share outs are important, and yeah, I think we have a pretty good idea of what that looks like.
Great. Thanks everybody for chipping in. I believe we've covered all the voices in the House at this time. Is there any further discussion, given that this subject is not intended to close today? Any comments from the Sunal? Yes.
I'm in the essence of being equitable, I just wanted to understand what our process is going forward on how we're going to discuss or move forward on stuff that different committees propose. Because I know we did a little proxy vote or for interest in what we shared with the community art project, but then didn't do it for some of the other proposals.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I recognize that there are places where we're stumbling on that process, but I would also suggest that that's a big topic that's a little separate from what we're discussing right now, and perhaps we should.
Okay. Oh, sorry. I thought you mentioned anything else. Apologies.
Okay, no worries. All right. Okay, so I feel like we have general guidelines. Just to check, is there any comment from the public at this time on what the Climate Action Committee should be saying to the City Council at that first meeting, which I believe is going to be more or less quarterly reports. And then if we're really trying to get something on their agenda, we have other ways to do that as well. Okay.
Joshua?
Yes.
I will throw myself under the bus of drafting up a PowerPoint to send out with the next packet as
Awesome.
a kind of proposed presentation.
Great. Thanks, Kenna. Always happy to have a point person on something like that. Okay, I want to acknowledge that we're doing great in getting through the agenda. We are starting to run out of time. I see a hand from Zeno before we move to the last couple of business items.
Yeah, I wonder whether the committee has any question for the City Council. Last time I asked, what is the relationship between the Regional Climate Protection Authority and its Climate Action Plan that Sarah Gurney is part of? She represents the city there, and the work that is done within the city. And I thought at the time, and that is information that I got somewhere online, that there was a joint power agreement between the cities, and that appears not to be the case. It's a slightly different legal construction. But so my question still stands anyway. Sarah has supported an action on county-wide level that is very detailed, has a lot of oomph in it. But what does that imply for the work of this committee and for the commitments that the city is making? So I'm still unclear about it, and I think people in the committee are maybe also unclear about this. So that could be a question that you ask.
Well, first, I believe that your question from the last meeting was addressed specifically through some communications and some handouts that came out in the attachments to the agenda for this meeting. Did you see that response to your previous question?
Yeah, but it didn't really say what the fact that Sarah has supported a action on county level means for the city.
Okay. My understanding, well, first of all, to say that answer your question is beyond the scope of our present meeting, but it sounds to me more or less like a question for the city council as opposed to a question for our committee, because I don't think that we have an answer to that. Diana, do you have a response on this subject?
Yeah, Zeno, I would suggest that you reach out directly to Sarah Gurney to have a conversation with her on that topic, because I think it might be a very effective way to address your specific questions. And I'm happy, I think you have her contact info, but I'm happy to provide that to you, Zena.
Yeah. Sarah did take point on fielding your question last time, and I thought I did her best to address it. All right, thank you, everyone. Just a couple more things to get through, and then we're out of here in a few moments. A little bit of chair reports, for which I will turn it to Kenna.
So the chair report's pretty much covered already. Sunny posted the link to Climate Action Night, and I believe everyone received an email about it too, to support the youth in our community, including our own youth delegate. And then there will be, I just want to make sure that everyone noted in the email, there will be a survey coming your way soon to give feedback on our process, how things are going, how we can improve. And so please keep your eyes peeled for that to come out in the next few days, and please respond so that we can keep improving. And that's it.
Great, thank you. We are at almost the last item, input from members regarding next meeting agenda. Jerry?
It's not so much for our meeting, but maybe it is, because the question that Zeno asked, in fact, it was Steve Pierce also was talking to me at one time saying, why don't we get a report from RCPA, and why don't we get a report from this and whatever else to the city council on a regular basis? And I pointed out to him that we have representatives from the city council on each one of those various committees, like Sonoma Clean Power, et cetera. I have a question for Diana. Do the members of the council report back to the council about what's happening in the various organizations that you are appointed members to?
Yes, we do. At the end of every city council meeting, which can be really, really late, each city council member reports out on their activities and involvement with boards. One thing that this committee could consider asking, so, you could attend the city council meetings to get that information, but one thing this committee could consider doing, if it hasn't already, is requesting that Sarah report out on the RCPA meetings that she's attended, since they're specifically applicable to this particular committee. I sit on the Zero Waste Sonoma, so I get information there, and I'd be happy to report out. You just have to make sure that we would have to have a limited report out. You'd have to tell us, like, you got 2 minutes, because otherwise it can take up a lot of time.
And it could be good for us to be signaled when that might be occurring, because you just mentioned a couple of them, but Sonoma Clean Power, clearly, and we've already consulted with them, with Lisa and Kenna and Steve and I. Sonoma County Transit, we have representatives there as well, and each one of those are part of the solution in working on climate.
Certainly.
So maybe in terms of a next agenda item, we could consider, okay, which regional groups would this committee like to hear reports out on? Because, for instance, Patrick Slater is Sonoma Clean Power, so you could invite him to show up, once a quarter and give a report out. So maybe that's an agenda item for next meeting.
Fair enough, duly noted. We are officially out of time, everybody, but if you can hang on for a moment longer, we'd like to confirm any sense of action items for next meeting. I believe, Kenna, you were tracking some of that, and if there are any that we missed along the way, Others can feel free to comment as well before we depart.
Yes, so I believe that Sunali and the people working on the art project, we're going to write up an actual kind of proposal of what we're endorsing, and same for Dina's sequestration committee involvement with the project that she described. It's helpful to us if those items come in by early next week because of the timelines we have to have. I will submit a draft presentation for the council and send out the survey. And I believe we have AB 965 on the agenda next time. And I'm not sure if we already have all the materials we need for that.
I believe we already received the essential attachment from Woody.
Oh, that's all I've got. Did I miss anything?
Jerry?
Yeah, aren't we going to bring back the recommendation to the council with information on smart meters?
Yes, smart meters is on the agenda.
Yes, so we need to, that would be an action item for the energy committee to submit executive summary before the deadline next Wednesday.
And we'll leave the issue of what we do about the cap in your hands for now, and we leave that off the agenda.
That's fine, yeah. And just to remind everybody about the timeline, we need to submit our agenda to the city staff by essentially end of the day on Wednesday, a week before our scheduled meeting. So it really helps if you're attaching things to that agenda, if you can get them to us Monday, Tuesday, sort of in that range, somewhat before the last minute, so we can stack them up and clarify any questions. Diana, further comment?
Just wondered if the gas station item needs to go on to the next agenda. I wasn't really tracking, but
I believe that would be nice. It's a subject that came up a couple of meetings ago, and we still haven't quite come to an understanding of what's at stake. So just to start with a staff report at least would help us to get a sense of how we want to handle it. Thank you for noting that.
For clarity on that, you're talking about the Chevron station that's upgrading, or are you talking about
Yes.
my request? Okay, yes, that's what you're talking about.
Yes,
Both of them are on the agenda for next time.
Both.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do we know the I'm sorry, do we know the schedule on the Chevron station as far as how fast that's go through planning? And
my understanding was that it was a preliminary stages at best at the moment. So
okay.
I don't think there's time sensitivity on this.
So it's not even a plan for the planning commission yet, right?
Yes. All right. Thanks everyone for sticking it out. We got through a lot of material today. Any further comments from the public or clarifications or discussion? Or if not, we shall be adjourning.
Joshua, can you just clarify? Because I
Yes.
got a little bit hung, I'm sorry, I got a little bit hung up. I thought you said the deadline is the Wednesday, close of business Wednesday before the meeting coming up the next week, but then you said get it to us by Monday or Tuesday. So
what I'm saying is that the facilitation team needs to have a compiled agenda and attachments to send to the city staff by Wednesday evening. So if you give us something Wednesday evening, we don't have time to fit it in.
So
with the other
our deadline, so we need to know what our deadline is. So our deadline is something like what, Monday evening?
Tuesday would be great. You know,
Tuesday would be great. Okay.
If you can do it a little earlier, fine. But you know, end of day Tuesday, I believe gives us enough to get it in.
Thank you. That
Luke,
helps.
yes.
I think previously we had been working with a noon on Wednesday deadline. If that sounds actionable, I'm fine with that as well. Just so it's not in the evening.
Yeah, I mean, it sort of depends on the availability.
Earlier the better.
I'm going to make my deadline Tuesday, close of business. I think
if you can give us a day lead time, that really helps, because you know, half a day we sometimes have other things happening. So, all right, again, thanks everyone. That was a good bunch of material. We look forward to smoothing this out bit by bit along the way, and everybody have a good evening.
You too.
Thank you. Good
Bye.
night.
Bye.
Thank you, Joshua. Thank you, Diana, for getting up. She's gone.
Still there.
All right, that was great, Joshua. You did a great job.
Thank you. It went, better than I might have expected, especially considering we started 15 minutes late. I was like, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. People seem basically receptive to the moving right along kind of approach.
Yeah. Yeah, and the having 2 of the round robins, I think, was very effective. And, having Jerry